Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. Evening, Calvin.
Good evening, Kevin. What another nonsense. Honestly, when does it stop? Of course, the Queen doesn't support Black Lives Matter as an organization. But this is the confusion of it all, isn't it? Because what people want to say is that I'm not a racist. I like black people. And to say that, they say, I support Black Lives Matter. And I think that's what's happened with the footballers. That's what's happened with many so-called liberal progressives. And that's what we're hearing today from Sir Ken Olisa. Bless him. The first black Lord Lieutenant for London has overstepped his mark. You said, you don't care about royal protocols. I do care about royal protocols. It's not his place to say any of this.
Yeah, but I would certainly not call Sir Ken a liar, but put it this way: I do not believe that the Queen passionately supports the Black Lives Matter movement as he contended.
No, I would agree with you on that entirely. I think, he said he's had conversations with the royals, Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family are, pro-equality, pro-diversity, inclusion, all of those funny fad words. But I think he probably surmised that they're in favour of Black Lives Matter from the conversation. I don't think that Her Majesty the Queen or the royal family would have said, oh, yes, we support Black Lives Matter. Because as you and I know, it's a neo-Marxist organisation. You've just read out all the things that's wrong about it, being against the nuclear family, against the police force, against Western values. But what he's doing here, what Sir Ken is doing, is dragging Her Majesty the Queen into politics. And that's entirely inappropriate. I think he had good intentions on wanting to say, yes, the royals are not racist, they're good people. But what he's done is aligned them with a neo-Marxist organization, linked them with values that are anti-British and anti-conservative, anti-Christian rather. And I don't think it's appropriate for Her Majesty to be dragged into that.
But it is this, I take your point, Calvin. It's just that royal protocol doesn't particularly interest me. And to be honest with you, as a journalist, I like it when royal protocol is broken. I find out a few personal things about the Queen. I do not believe she's passionately in favour of Black Lives Matter. But it does demonstrate my contention that we just can't get away from this organisation. Ever since George Floyd met his maker over in Minnesota, Black Lives Matter has infested every part of our society. It would help, would it not, if these damn footballers and Gareth Southgate and that, if they must take the knee and say, oh, look at us, look how unracist we are, if you must do it, for God's sake, tell us that you disassociate yourselves from the Black Lives Matter movement. They won't do it, will they?
No, they won't do it. And there needs to be a new language around this, I think, because you said just there, tell us that you're not a racist. And that's fine. That's how it used to be. But now everyone wants to say that they're anti-racist. They want to show that they're not just not racist. They are the opposite of a racist. They're an anti-racist. It's like,
they're really, angrily anti-racist.
I know, come off it. I think we can give people the benefit of the doubt and assume that most people in this country are not racist. We don't need a special label to identify ourselves as not racist. We'll just assume that we're not and point out the actual racists, and let's do it that way around instead, because all this does, it divides people once more, and everything in our society right now is divided. But I looked into the quote. I found Sir Ken's quote. He said, the royals care passionately about making this one nation bound by the same values. So I think the headlines of the newspapers have taken this word passionately and added Black Lives Matter and trying to associate it to all. I think the royal family are passionately not racist. I wouldn't even go as far as to call them anti-racist, but we're aligning with all of these silly labels. Let's just get rid of them all. And where does it all come from? Where does it all stem from? You're right in that a lot of it's from George Floyd, but this issue in particular actually comes from Meghan Markle casting aspersions and dropping vague accusations of the royal family without actually naming who said what and what was said.
Yeah, this assumption propagated by people like Meghan Markle that basically, all of us are racists unless otherwise informed. But let's talk about the footballers for a second, Calvin. I think that match in Hungary, the other night there was another match in Poland, similar response, not quite as noisy, but roundly booed. They get booed when they take the knee in this country as well. England fans don't like it, and yet they carry on. So when you hear that cacophonous reaction to the taking of the knee, basically by a bunch of racists in Hungary, it just proves how little this gesture has achieved. They've been doing it now for a year and a half before every game, much to the displeasure of millions of football fans. Racism in the game has got worse. So it's an empty gesture that has achieved the square root of damn all. Why do they continue? I would contend it's because they want to be seen, all that they could satisfy themselves with the fact, oh, look at us. Look at us taking the knee, proving we're not racist. That'll sort out racism in the game. It has done nothing of the sort.
Yeah, it's a dilemma, isn't it? If you're a footballer, you've got a choice to make. Do you stand up and not take a knee with your peers and look like a racist? Or do you take a knee and receive boos from the crowd, assuming that you're a neo-Marxist? Which would you rather be, a racist or a neo-Marxist? It's not, it's not a fun game to play, is it? So we need to keep asking the questions. How long are you going to keep taking the knee? Are you going to take the knee until you've solved racism in football? Because that would probably mean you're taking the knee forever. There'll always be an element of racism. And does it actually change anything? Does taking the knee make a difference? I don't think so. Like you said, it might have actually made things worse because we're constantly on about this topic and we're constantly seeing fans booing, and it's not helping social cohesion. It's dividing people yet again. It's a divisive movement because it comes from a divisive ideology, which is the neo-Marxist organization based on critical race theory, which is a branch of identity politics, which essentially says that there are two types of people in the world: white people and non-white people. And I don't believe that. I think we are all part of one human race. We need to stop obsessing over our skin colors.
Yeah, it's become a ridiculous obsession with all of us, or our entire country, and in America as well. We are rather unhealthily fixated on racism. If there isn't any racism, we come up with things like critical race theory and unconscious bias to invent it where it is not. What I'd like to see in terms of tackling racism in football, there is a problem. And by the way, can I just say that taking the knee in a kind of cauldron of hatred of that stadium in Budapest borders on irresponsible. It's provocative. For God's sake, don't provoke a crowd like that. There were Nazi salutes and everything. So wouldn't it have been better to just not do it? However, what I'd like to see in terms of really tackling racism in the game of football would be maybe, I don't know, one black football manager, one executive in the FA of colour. Do you see what I mean? They satisfy themselves. Oh, look, they're all taking the knee. That's great, isn't it? Aren't we great? But they don't do anything in terms of black players being promoted to managerial positions, black players holding executive positions in the FA. That's what they've got to sort out.
This is where I disagree with you, Kev, because I think you're falling into their trap there of representation. We need to see a certain number of black people in certain roles and whatnot. And I really don't care about that. I think that, if a black footballer wants to become a manager, he'll go for it. Maybe they often don't. Maybe they've got the money, they're living their happy lives, they've retired or whatever after playing. But let's also remember that, the majority of our footballers are ethnic minorities at this point. But that's a new thing, because the diversity of our country has changed quite recently. So I suspect over the next 10 to 20 years, we will see more black managers and executives in football. But again, we shouldn't focus on the skin color because it's unimportant, and we're falling into their trap by constantly discussing it. We need to move away from it and say to the people that are taking the knee, time to stop.
You're right, Calvin. You put me straight yet again. And you want to know who my hero is in all of this? It's Wilfried Zaha, the Crystal Palace player, a brilliant player, by the way, one of the greatest footballers in the world, in my view, a player of colour. He won't take the knee because he says it's demeaning and degrading, which I think pretty much sums it up. Calvin, it is always a pleasure to talk to you.